Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Family Renewal Podcast. I am Israel Wayne, and today we're going to take a little bit different approach. I'm going to be looking at a blog post that I posted on my website, christianworldview.net /blog. And this was actually September 1st of 2020. Originally, I had posted some similar things on Facebook and then compiled them into a blog post. But the title of this article on my blog from September 1, 2020 is The Hostile Takeover of Cultural Marxism. I believe these issues are still very timely and relevant. So I want us to look at them. I'm going to read these articles, and I hope they will be helpful and instructive for you. While Americans were being trained to be germaphobes and were preoccupied with making sure their masks fit just right, Marxist progressives silently implemented their long-held plan to create the largest shift in economic and political power America had ever seen. What ramped up after 9/11, 2001, and escalated after the government created housing collapse in 2007 was given an injection of steroids in 2020. Billionaires, in conjunction with federal Republicans and Democrats, implemented economic policies that would cause the net worth of the top 1% of wealth holders to become exponentially more wealthy through unfair legislation and tax breaks, while small business owners were pulverized by not being allowed to compete in the marketplace. Marxists have never been about equality. They are always about control and creating more wealth for the 1%. Also, during this same time, the revolution included replacing cultural landmarks, inciting internal civil strife, race riots, and infiltrating religious organizations by banning their meetings, making them dependent on federal aid, while requiring them to comply with new unprecedented mandates, such as giving over the names of those who attend public meetings, i.e. COVID contact tracing. Make no mistake, we are in the midst of a Marxist revolution. The sad part is it won't be bloodless, and we haven't begun to see the end of it. A real virus, whether created or organic, has been seized as the needed impetus to override the Constitution and shift power from the working middle class to the elites. The goal is to make citizens dependent on the government and afraid. We saw this with the creation of the Patriot Act and TSA. We saw it again in the federal bailouts of 2008 that unfairly benefited some corporations while facilitating the demise of thousands of others. Now the floodgates have opened, and I fear we'll never get them shut. Be prepared for mass mandatory vaccination laws, greater expansion of control over private schools and homeschools, since most will soon take government money through federal school choice, the creation of more federal agencies, more government employees and less private sector workers, more government tracking of individuals, increased control of information, and suppression of dissent, especially by the billionaires who control social media, and probably an election debacle precipitated by alleged mail fraud because of millions of mail-in ballots. You have to remember, I wrote this back in late August of 2020. So I think I called that right. The Marxist progressives have tasted victory, and now they are emboldened. The LGBTQ movement will stop talking about equality and start acting to punish dissenters. The America you and I were born into has been held hostage by cultural Marxists. Compliance is their goal, and we've been conditioned for it by decades of conditioning in socialistic government schools. An old story, perhaps fictitious, recounts how someone asked Joseph Stalin how he could be so cruel to his people and still have them comply. He called for a chicken, held it, and slowly plucked it in front of onlookers. He set it down, trembling and in shock. Then he took a bowl of milk and put it on the ground at his feet. The chicken hobbled to the milk and began to drink. Stalin informed his stunned observers that people will endure any treatment, no matter how cruel, as long as they depend on you for food. Oh, how I wish Americans knew history and economics. We're being played, folks, and we're too dumbed down and dependent to even realize it. How shall we now live? In response to this post on social media about cultural Marxism taking control of our society and what is soon coming for us, several people have asked me, other than pray and vote, what can we do? I appreciate your question. I don't want to leave you with no strategy. Many of the right things to do, I'm sure you're already doing. We need to never skip past the important prayer aspect. Sometimes we say all we can do now is pray. And while it isn't true that that's the only thing we can do, it is the most important thing that we can do. The vote component isn't difficult because increasingly red shirts and blue shirts all play on the same socialist team. We have socialist heavy and socialist light. The problem with socialism is the socialism, not really the degree. However, slowing the evil gives us more time to work. So vote against the deeper shades of Marxism when you can, and really get behind a strict and true constructionists if they ever run in your district. Now, some things that come to mind for us to do while it is day include, number one, encourage everyone you know to get their kids out of the socialist government school system. We must rescue the children who are being indoctrinated into this cultural Marxist ideology. I'd recommend giving them copies of my books, Answers for Homeschooling, Top 25 Questions Critics Ask, and Education, Does God Have an Opinion? To friends, and let those books speak for themselves. They say everything that needs to be said. Number two, don't send your children to a secular college unless you have at least 3 angelic visitations and personal phone calls from the Pope and Benny Hinn telling you to. Even then, I probably wouldn't do it. I put a little smiley face emoji in my article. So for those of you who lack a sarcasm gene, I'm being sarcastic here. But I'm being serious about the point. And be super picky on Christian colleges too. 70% of all professing Christian youth deny their faith by the end of their freshman year at a secular college. These schools have become cesspools of cultural Marxism and atheism. Number three, churches need to decentralize, and many need to unincorporate or never incorporate in the first place. Now, I've been saying for years that a time would eventually arrive, and I think that time is now. A large 501c3 church is too large and top-heavy to avoid compliance with government mandates. There are many churches that are not incorporated that can operate fine with 100 people or less and no salaries. We need a lot more of those kinds of churches. If you don't need to own your own building and pay staff, you have a lot more options. That's how the church operates in communist and Islamic nations around the world. And if you look at their model or the church throughout history, you'll kind of get a picture of how this can look. Number four, we need to establish true Christian community, not communes, and Facebook groups don't count. Because we're going to need each other more than ever before as we move forward. If you don't have local Christian friends you trust, you should find some. And if you do have them, please hang on to them for dear life and learn to work things out and remain friends. So Matthew 6:33 tells us to ask and seek and knock. I understand this process may be difficult for you, but I encourage you to seek out godly Christian community. Number five, get out of debt. When you are debt-free, you have options. When you have debt, you're a slave and you cannot make the best choices for your family. I'm not name calling here. The Bible tells us that the borrower is slave to the lender. Number six, don't accept government money for your child's education. Whoever pays for your child's education will control it. If you want free liberty in how you choose content for your child, you need to be paying for your child's education out of your own pocket. I understand you already pay taxes and that's a frustration, but you need to pay for your child's education yourself. Number 7, find ways to diversify your current income. If the financial faucet gets turned off because of unemployment, downsizing, etc., you can become dependent on the state, which is what they want. So look for alternative revenue streams. Number 8, if possible, start growing your own food and keep several months of food storage on hand. It's not paranoia, it's wise stewardship. What we saw during the COVID-19 rush on toilet paper and food is just a dress rehearsal for how bad the supply chain can actually be disrupted if we have 2 or 3 crises that collide. If they compound and coalesce and intersect, we can see much worse upheaval with the supply chain than what we saw. Number 9, educate yourself. Study history and free market economics. Also, study theology and apologetics. There are some great links for those on my website, christianworldview.net. Number 10, shift some of your free time into action. Find a cause you believe in and donate some time. Yes, donate money, but also time. Get involved in the work. We lead by example. If we want our children to engage the culture, we must as well. In the final analysis, there is little we can do to stop a monstrosity the size of our government. We do need to know, personally, for us, where our line of compliance ends. I'll suggest masks and social distancing isn't the line to choose, but those things should wake us up to the bigger picture. We need to know what orders we will eventually be forced by conscience to disobey. There must be a line for every true Christian where they must choose to obey God rather than man. There's much more that I could say, and I may later, but I hope this gives you a few key action points for now. We will not live through anything that millions in history haven't survived before us. We can learn from their example how to band together and be overcomers amid cultural revolution. Jesus said in John 16:33, I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I've overcome the world. In the end, Jesus wins. Don't grow weary in well-doing. Romans 12:21 tells us, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Well, my friends, I appreciate you listening and hearing me out. I'm thankful for you and your friendship. I appreciate your continued support of our ministry, Family Renewal. You can visit us on the web at familyrenewal.org. You can subscribe to our podcast by Google searching Family Renewal Podcast. And you'll find us on the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. You will also find us on YouTube. We have a separate YouTube channel where you can watch the video episodes. Just type in Family Renewal Podcast. You can connect with me personally on social media. Just type in Israel Wayne or Family Renewal. You'll find us on almost every social media platform. Again, we hope to have you visit our websites, familyrenewal.org, and my Christian apologetics website, christianworldview.net. Until next time, God bless you. Thanks for listening.